Hey friends, happy new year and welcome to episode 580 of the My 123 Cents podcast. I am Kevin Huntsberger, joined this week once again by Chad Smart. Chad, how was your Christmas holiday?
It was good, I
Good.
think. I'm trying to remember. Yeah. Nobody got sick.
That's always a
Uh,
plus.
I didn't get underwear for Christmas, which, I mean, we're at that age now where that's actually a good present, but I did get
Right.
socks. I did get socks. So that's
Nice.
always nice. Yeah.
Very nice. So I kind of splurged on myself this year and took my Christmas money and got the nostalgia. If you're not watching, you're missing the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and John Cena in LJN form. They're still in the box. I'm gonna eventually unbox and put them with the rest of the LJNs. But my friend Barry Carafa in Cape Girardeau found those for me in Cape here in. We talked on the phone the other day too about how they didn't have the LJNs, Target being they, didn't put them with the regular wrestling figures, which you would think would be where they were
Yeah.
at. I checked several times, and then somebody smartened me up to the fact that they were putting them in the Christmas aisle. There was a small toy section in the Christmas aisle. So it wasn't just the LJNs that were there, but others. I looked here locally in Marion, and all they had was Hulk Hogan and Logan Paul. I have the original Hogan from '85. I didn't feel like I needed another one because my collection behind me, I that's my space for my stuff, and I didn't want to overwhelm my stuff. And then Logan Paul, I think I'm going to stick to a more retired superstar list of the LJNs or folks that aren't active or as active. So I may eventually do Logan Paul, but also a friend of mine was purging some stuff, and this is a framed picture of Vince McMahon from, I don't remember what event it is, but it's the split face, and he's actually autographed it, and it's numbered.
Isn't that a
So
DVD?
well, I think it was, yeah, it might be. Was there a McMahon DVD? Because it just says McMahon on it. World Wrestling Entertainment presents McMahon, and then it's signed number 230 of 500 rather. So
Uh,
he said he bought it. It was like $5. He did he bought a t-shirt back in the day on WWE
wow.
Shop, and then they were throwing these in as a add-on. So
Wow.
anyway, I don't know if it's PC to talk about that or not, but
Mm.
it's in the collection now, and we'll
Yeah,
see.
it's petty cash.
With it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you told me that you were getting the Dusty figure because I sent you the picture that I'd found them in the Christmas toy aisle,
Hmm.
and I actually picked up a Dusty that I was going to send to you,
Oh,
but you saved me some shipping costs. And
there
I
you
can
go.
debate if I want to start a wrestling figure collection or not. But did you also see? I guess not if you didn't have them at your mall, but they also had a like shrunken video game console,
They
like
did have those.
arcade, the WrestleFest or WrestleMania or
Yes,
whatever it is.
they did have those there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually contemplated that too. I actually thought about I was if they had Cena locally, I was going to get it for the toy drive because I figure of the current active roster, John's a kid would like to wake up to a John Cena. Maybe not so much a Logan Paul. I don't know. Maybe I should have gotten a Logan Paul, but they didn't have it, and I had already by the time I got this one, the toys had been donated, and I just got this the day before Christmas. So, um, did you collect? We've talked about this before. You had some, but you didn't save your collection, right?
I don't know what happened to my collection. I remember I had them. I mean I can remember Iron Sheik was my first, and I got Bundy for my birthday. But I don't know if I ever had Hogan.
Oh wow,
I told you I wasn't a Hulkamaniac as a kid,
yeah,
and I don't know. I mean, my cousin had most of them, at least the first like two waves, and then
yeah.
I think either they stopped being available everywhere, or we just stopped collecting them. But yeah, I don't know. They're probably hanging out with my Star Wars figures somewhere in some other kid's basement. So
That's the thing, yeah. The wrestling stuff I did hang on to most of it, and I'm still missing. I had the little Remcos, the AWA did. and I know I had some of them here in this house in Illinois. We've lived here more than 20 years now, and at one point I had them because, or some of them, and I think it was Hawk or Animal, the Road Warriors. The kids were playing with it, and the leg busted off. So, uh,
Mhm.
but the other ones, I don't know what happened to them, and so I eventually need to go back to my dad's attic and look around and see what I can find. But yeah,
So,
oh, go ahead.
do you think with these new LJN figures that they'll do just basically a rehash of the popular original line?
See that, and that's, yeah, that's kind of where, this first line, it's
Mm.
Dusty, John Cena, and Logan Paul, who obviously didn't have LJNs, and then they redid the Hulk Hogan, and they've upgraded it a little bit.
Mhm.
Wave two is going to be Stone Cold Steve Austin, King Kong Bundy, which pretty much is the same. The Ultimate Warrior, which was kind of the uh, much anticipated. It's, if you look now on, just
Mm.
a loose version of him, it's hundreds of dollars. So, and then a redo of Jesse Ventura. Now, the other ones that they've redone have been um, just true redos, but
Yeah.
Jesse Ventura, the '80s version, he's in his wrestling gear. The new updated version that comes out in the spring, I believe, is a commentator version of him, kind of
Mm.
how you dressed for WrestleMania that year that you went as Jesse. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's cool to see it. I will get the Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm debating on the Ultimate Warrior because I kind of still want to find that in the wild and not pay hundreds of dollars. I want to stumble upon a real estate sale or a yard sale or a flea market and find it in a bucket for $10. That's been my goal or my dream of doing that, but I don't know that it's going to happen. I may just break down and buy the Ultimate Warrior just to have it, but they're obviously more intricate with the details compared to the ones from the '80s, but it's cool. It's that nostalgia. I mean, they really redid the package. The packaging is all the same.
Mhm.
It just says WWE Superstars instead of WWF, but they do the back the same, the little card with the bio, the bonus token, and then of course the lineup. So I don't know. It was kind of that nostalgia pop, 40 years earlier, finding them in the stores for that first. I remember finding it for the first time, and then finally finding them here in Southern Illinois. It was like, uh, uh, you're more limited though here because I think these are just Target exclusives. I don't think they're, you can order them online,
Yeah.
but I don't think they're doing them at like Walmart. We'd go to Walmart or
Mhm.
we found them in Florida for the first time at a store called Pick and Save. So, uh, I don't know. It's cool. I enjoy obviously the figures and whatnot, but and eventually we're going to talk about 2026 here in a minute. One of my goals is to finally get this area, this space updated and looking the way I want it to look, things hung on the walls and not everything just stacked and piled.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Now,
2026 is going to happen.
all right. I believe you. Do you have any big rubber guys?
I have the not in hand. I pre-ordered the Kerry Von Erich, I think, gosh, April or May.
Mm.
And they've had, they switched factories and they've had some issues with getting them here. The big rubber guys are very cool and nostalgic as well. And from what they look, they are very comparable to the LJNs. They obviously started doing, they being the Collect Major, the Major Wrestling Figure podcast, started doing those, and then LJNs came out or got re-released. I don't know if it was all part of the plan or if they, if WWE and Mattel and LJN saw the nostalgia for the big LJN style figures, so they brought them back. I'm not 100% sure, but uh, they're $50. They're
Yeah.
twice the price as a WWE LJN. So there were a couple back in, they did a Dusty as well, but WWE is the polka dotted Dusty, and Big Rubber Guys is just more like the NWA style of him. But um, Kerry Von Erich is my all-time favorite, or one of my all-time favorites, so I had to splurge and get him. But they were supposed to come in September, and that wave didn't come out then, and so now they're saying early 2026. So I'm hoping January, February he arrives as well. So
All right.
You got to jump on
Yeah.
board, you know, and I kind of switched to these little micro brawlers because
Mhm.
they obviously take up less space, but the LJNs, man, it's the 80s all over again for me. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on it and track it and see and probably post some stuff here in the future. But 2026, right around the corner. We're recording this just days before the new year. This will be the last podcast of 2025. Anything, Chad? And I know you watched World's End.
Mhm.
Anything you want to comment or chat about that? What kind of shape will that take leading AEW into 2026? Anything significant? I know obviously we have a new heavyweight champion. Um, any overall thoughts of that show specifically leaning into 26?
I think 2025 has been a rebound year for AEW, especially after Y'all In, when Hangman Page won the title from Moxley. The Death Rider story was kind of a drag in the first half of the year. Um, so I think as long as they can stay focused, and we've talked before that Tony Khan doesn't seem to be rage baiting on Twitter as much.
Hmm.
Whenever something happens, he's just kind of focusing on his company. And you know, again, I don't know if AEW will ever achieve the heights of WWE or Attitude Era WCW, because as we've discussed before, wrestling isn't the draw in that regard. It's the character. I was thinking about this the other night. The Attitude Era, the wrestling sucked, if we're
Hmm.
honest. It was
Right.
all about the characters and the story. And AEW has characters, but they're not necessarily the over the top personas. It
Mhm.
it is more the work rate niche market. So I think in terms of what AEW is trying to be, they're successful. There is room for improvement. No company is perfect, and I'm curious where they're going with Moxley winning the C2 tournament. Again, he went from being one of the most hated wrestlers on the card to now the fans are behind him, but I don't think they're behind the Death Riders.
Hmm.
And the way things were looking, we've all been expecting the Death Riders to jump Moxley and kick him out of the group. Will that still happen? And one of those, Claudio or Danny Garcia or somebody challenge him for the Continental Championship or International, whichever one he has. Um, but yeah, I think, and I'm waiting to see if Cope and Christian ever come back. They seem to have disappeared. I know Cope went off to do Percy Jackson,
Hmm.
but Christian must have just been tagging along with him because he hasn't been seen in a couple of months. So, I'm hopeful for what 2026 will bring. We discussed it before. I have tickets to Revolution, the next pay per view in March, which is shocking to me that they're taking 2 months off from pay per view. It's like they don't do much in the first half of the year, and then so too much in the last half.
Hmm.
But yeah, I will be seventh row at Revolution, hopefully sitting behind Dr. Ken and Paul Walter Hauser, and
Is
maybe
that in LA?
yeah.
Okay.
So, so I have high hopes. Last year's Revolution, which I attended, was one of the best shows of the year. So they've got a lot to live up to.
Do you think with, streaming options changing and the way, you know, and I don't think we are being snarky or egotistical or overly confident when we say
Mm-hmm.
wrestling is not going to be the same that it was in the 80s or 90s or even early 2000s because I think simply because of the way we consume it now. There's not that. I mean, I can remember being in college and even in my early 20s out of college and the
Mm-hmm.
anticipation of Monday night and switching, having the remote and
Yeah.
being able to do the automatic jump back and watching WCW and WWF.
Yeah.
Or ordering a pay-per-view and recording it on a video cassette tape and then and watching
Mhm.
it over and over. Fans
Mhm.
just we don't have that way of consuming it anymore. And I think that I don't want to say that it has ruined anything, but it's just different from what, and this
Yeah.
generation of fans are going to grow up consuming it a totally different way.
Yeah.
But I think that house shows, over the weekend, the 41-year anniversary of my first live event happened. And I
Yeah.
was just thinking about how excited I was Christmas 84 to wake up and find out that we were going to go 2 days later to the WWF show that was coming to St. Louis. So kids today aren't going to get that experience. And not to criticize WWE or
Mhm.
TKO, I guess more specifically, their pricing plan
Yeah.
seemingly is put, and this is where I think Tony Khan and AEW and maybe TNA and hopefully some others can
Mhm.
show that value and be that alternative for fans that want quality wrestling and be able to take the family and not necessarily, if you don't mind me asking, what did you pay for your ticket to Revolution?
Not as this is actually the cheapest pay-per-view that I've gone to, I think. I only paid 250
Okay.
for seventh row on the floor.
Right.
I did not, I'm behind the collectible chair section,
Got
so I didn't get that. But um, you know, as I've told you, concert tickets prices here in LA are it's $150 just to get into the door at most shows now. So while 250 is more than I would want to pay for a
Mhm.
show, to be that close, and you talk about TKO and WWE, 250 isn't even getting me. I'm going to be standing outside watching a screen in the
Yeah.
lobby or the concourse
Yeah.
of a WWE show. So, um, yeah, I don't know who is paying these high prices, but apparently somebody is, or enough people are that they keep charging them.
Well, and the interesting thing, and I'm not being a WWE apologist by any means,
Mhm.
but I'm on TikTok, and over Christmas there were several videos that came across my timeline. Obviously, I follow wrestling content, so I get
Mhm.
fed those videos, but of kids, little kids opening up tickets to not live events anymore, but to a Raw or to a SmackDown
Mhm.
that's coming to their town. I know
Yeah.
SmackDown is coming to St. Louis in April. I've contemplated, I have not moved on it, and I probably won't realistically, but I had thought about getting tickets just to kind of go and check it out. But I'll tell you something off air bit too. But uh, I can't imagine, I mean, really, if you are a parent or someone that is looking to go from giving your kid something like this to the
Mhm.
experience, then yeah, I could see that being a thing. And how many WrestleManias did we go to that we would see families of 3, 4, 5 kids
Mhm.
running around with mom and dad and
Yeah.
going to WrestleCon or going, and then to Mania itself. So I guess if you're looking for that experience and for some, we've been fortunate. We've been to 10. For
Mhm.
some, that probably is a once in a lifetime trip. And so they
Mhm.
go all in, pardon the pun,
Yeah.
go all in with it. So
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you know, again, that's 10 manias over 20 years. I get inflation, things
right,
change.
sure.
But I think if you add up the cost of all 10 WrestleMania tickets that we went to, that's mid-level seats at WrestleMania 42.
Right, right.
And we were sitting, those first couple, we were down on the floor,
Yeah.
so it's not like we were just sitting in the cheap seats the entire time. We
Yeah, we
splurged a
got the
bit.
chairs.
Yeah, we got the chairs to prove we're idiots, but and financially irresponsible. But yeah, again, for me, we've talked about it before on the show. I'm not going to WWE shows anymore because to me the value isn't there.
Mhm.
But for others it is. And there are enough people that are doing it that will go to, I there's one YouTuber I saw, and granted, he's a popular YouTuber, so I'm sure he's making more money, but he has a video out. It's like I paid $5,000 to go to John Cena's last match. And I'm
Yeah,
like, I I don't think I would have paid $5,000 to go to Ric Flair's last. When
right,
we went,
right.
but as we've discussed, it's a different fan era of fans. That's what I'm trying to say. Like,
Mhm.
and these fans, and I guess if you grow up in that and that's the environment, then you're just used to it. Whereas, my girlfriend and I were talking about clothes the other day, and she was like, "Oh, I wanted a new jacket, and this one that I saw that was basically is a replacement of the one that she has that she paid $80 for a few years ago is now $180."
Mm.
And I'm like, if I see shirts for more than $20, I say no because I'm used to $20 being the shirt price. And I go to a concert now they're $50, and I'm just
Right.
like, but that's me being old and remembering when prices were cheaper, even though I'm sure my bank account was also a lot smaller. So
Mhm. Right.
yeah.
Well, do you think, because 2025 obviously was the year of John Cena and the retirement
Mhm.
tour. They've set all kinds of records. And I think they were able to do that because, as we talked about previously, they strategically, he wanted to do 200 dates or whatever
Yeah.
the number was, and they limited that. And obviously, I think you can charge more. It's the whole supply and demand thing. It's basic economics. 2020, and when we're talking about 2025 and
Yeah.
Cena's last run, I don't know that there is anyone, except maybe with the exception of The Rock at this point in time, that you could do another legitimate uh, tour of sorts with.
Mhm.
Obviously AJ Styles. There's rumors that Chris Jericho and Brock Lesnar maybe. I'm assuming Jericho didn't show up at World's End.
He did not. He apparently had a YouTube live stream going at the same time. And I saw some headline that said he made a comment about a WWE return. I'm guessing it wasn't, yes, I'm going back, or no, I'm not going back. I'm sure it
Yeah,
was very cryptic.
yeah. But with these, I think we've also kind of reached that point where the big names of the Attitude Era, and even maybe even a little bit leaking into the Attitude Era, but then
Mhm.
definitely beyond that, you know, we could theoretically, probably for the next 10 years at least, be
Yeah.
set up with a quote unquote retirement tour. Now, whether they do that or not, I don't think that anyone's going to get the Cena treatment, but we'll see these guys as they start to retire. But I don't see someone shelling out $5 grand to see AJ Styles last match. No disrespect to AJ. There
Yeah.
are some fanatics that would do that, but
Yeah.
if that one guy paid $5 grand, that there's a whole section of people at least that
Mhm.
pay that. And so I guess what I'm getting at is what does WWE or will they do anything to counter the Cena effect in 26? Because he's gone. He wasn't at Raw.
Mhm.
It is the reality now that there is no more John Cena. Now he may pop in and promote or say something about whatever, but no more matches. What do they need to do in your mind to rebound? Because I do think most of us can agree that 25 was not the most stellar year creatively
Mhm.
for WWE. We've talked ad nauseum about the heel turn of Cena and the booking and the final match and all of that. Um, what do you and what in your mind? Because you said you don't watch anymore. You don't pay for the
Mhm.
ESPN. You're not paying for Netflix. What would they need to do to bring you back, or at this point, is it a lost cause for you?
You know, I don't know because I think, as I've discussed, it's the presentation of WWE that gets me. And I'm not a huge sports person. I mean, I'll have football on during football season, but I'm not obsessing over stats.
Mhm.
Again, as a Miami Dolphins fan, don't even realize that the season starts half the time because they're not going to be in contention. Um, but for some reason, I like that. What draws me to AEW is the more sports focused presentation that they have, whereas WWE is more entertainment focus. And and that's why I'm like, WWE matches are too repetitive to me. They're too um not I don't want to say choreographed, but it's just like, at least in the AEW world, there are counters to the moves that guys do every match. Not all the time, but it's there.
Mhm.
And WWE, I think, is more reliant again on the character. And right now, there's just no character that resonates with me. I said it a few months ago when we were discussing Roman Reigns. They've pushed Roman Reigns for the last 5, 6 years, if not more. I don't care about Roman Reigns. The bloodline was good, but not because of him. It was good because of the surrounding characters.
Mm. Hmm.
So I don't know. Also, if I am going to spend 3 hours watching a show, if you're giving me an hour and a half or more of commercials and promos, like I have other things that I would rather be doing. So again, I think it's just a presentation aspect.
You know what
Because
I find?
again, I like the wrestlers themselves are fine. The wrestling is okay, but I just I I think there's too much downtime.
I find it interesting because I didn't realize. I guess I realized it, but I didn't know how they were presenting it. But Raw on the week of Christmas was pre-recorded, I'm guessing.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I fired it up on Netflix, and it was like an hour and 42 minutes. And
Yeah.
found that when you watch it, if you don't watch it live, it obviously is much shorter because they
Yeah.
don't put the commercials in, which I found interesting. So anyway,
I mean,
um,
when I had Netflix, that's how I would watch. I would wait and
yeah,
watch after the show had started, so it skips through the commercials.
yeah, I understand what you're saying, and but I don't watch AEW. I don't have Max, so I don't watch. That's probably the one streaming service we don't have at this point. But um, do you think that there's any talent in AEW if they were to go to WWE? Would you be? Because I think, and you'll correct me here,
Mhm.
I thought at one point when I don't know if it was a work shoot or if it was, legit or if it was
Mhm.
just part of the show, when MJF was kind of going through negotiations
Yeah.
and I feel like, and maybe it was 2024 he was talking, but I felt like it was 2026
Mm.
his contract was up with AEW. I don't anticipate he would leave I feel like he's going to be one of those guys that sticks around for a while, but I thought that about Cody Rhodes too. But
Mhm.
what a jump like MJF or Moxley again, or even Tony Storm, any of those talents going over. And I think or WWE with the talent that has jumped over has
Mhm.
done a decent job of keeping that character, Jade and Cody come to mind specifically. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't know much about Ricky Saint as far as what he was in AEW versus what he is in NXT,
Yeah.
or Sean Spears, but if any of those talents jumped, would you check it out? Blake Monroe, I think obviously they
Yeah.
changed her up, but I don't know if I can't even remember what her name was before.
Or IMA.
Brian May. I knew it was double M's. Um, you know, if that was copyrighted or if they just wanted to give her a clean slate. But anyway, talent wise, do you see any of those talents jumping uh, in the near future? And if they did, would it make a difference for you?
I mean, I think some AEW talent will be jumping in the next couple of years whenever contracts are up, and I think it's a good thing.
Mhm.
We've
Yeah,
discussed before. The Miz has been in WWE for 20 years.
yeah.
Would he be better suited had he gone off somewhere else and expanded his wrestling knowledge or wrestling skill set instead of just being Tiny Balls Miz?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and so I think I liked Mariah May in AEW. I liked Ricky Starks in AEW. Never really cared for Ethan Page. And the problem I have now is that they're all on NXT, which I have no access to the CW, so I don't get to watch it on a weekly basis to see the character development.
Yeah.
And so when I tune in to Peacock to an NXT event, it's like watching any other sport for the first time. It's like
Yeah.
you don't have that history, and so I would say out of those, my fandom of Mariah May and Ricky Saints has gone down just because I don't get to see them, and Ricky Saints is one that I like. he was good, but he was always kind of missing something in my eyes. And I think what I've seen in WWE is he hasn't gained that yet. And I don't know. Maybe it's just this thing doesn't make any sense to me. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, I think it's when people go to WWE, the style that they present, I don't want to say it hinders wrestlers, but it's not as captivating. Just put it that way. I know it's a little, I mean, you're getting choked up because, and you know, and like you know, I've said it multiple times on this show. Cody Rhodes is the same way. Like that presentation, like he's doing basically what he was doing in AEW. And granted, the fans had turned on him in his last 6 months or so in AEW, but I think this again, it comes down to the story and the struggle.
Yeah, yeah, right. So let's get to, I guess, some. Well, let's finish up. I want to get
Well, let me ask real quick, and I think we've touched on it before. If Chris Jericho goes to WWE, you know, which again, I think he should. I think he should have that retirement year, unless he has gotten in great shape over the last 8 months that he's been away from AEW. I think the time has come for him to graciously bow out. And that's nothing against him. That's just, hey, you know, you're 53, 54 years old now. You know, you can't do what you were doing 30 years ago. Do you think the same fans that were critical of him in AEW will now cheer him in WWE, and vice versa, where the fans that cheer him in AEW now criticize him in WWE?
Yeah, I mean, it's all part of the whole tribalism thing that we hear about and see on social media. But I also think that because we are looking at it on social media, and I do believe there are a lot of fans, obviously, on social media, but I also think that that's just a fraction. You know, when you go to whatever arena, cryptocurrency arena, or whatever it is, go see Revolution, there's going to be kids there. There's going to be parents that don't even know what Twitter is or X or whatever. So, you know, I do think that social media in some regards has contributed, not some regards, in all regards, contributed to the tribalism aspect of wrestling. And even the guys that come out, you know, the Conrads of the world, which I love Conrad in his podcast, but he comes out and says, you know, tribalism sucks. We shouldn't do it. And then in the next breath, he's, you know, going off on something WWE did and presenting a pass for AEW. And by the same token, Eric Bischoff is going off on something AEW did and giving WWE the pass. So, and I think it's all part of, you know, we live in a society now too, where rage bait and clickbait and rule. That's why this podcast stays at a level, because we're not controversial. We don't say things, and maybe that's what we do in 2026. You know, we start, you know,
we got to get personalities.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it. I think people intentionally say things and do things to just get a reaction. And like we said, it's called rage bait. And so I think that's part of it. But yeah, I think, you know, I never will criticize, you know, unless it's, I don't want Ric Flair to wrestle again. Jerry Lawler saying, you know, and I guess we'll piggyback on this. You know, Jerry Lawler recently said he feels like he has one more match. And apparently Nick Khan and Triple H have said not in our ring. And I think some people were kind of crapping on that, but a lot of people were like, well, good for WWE because WWE, obviously TKO in the last year criticized for chasing that almighty dollar. I don't think, obviously, Jerry Lawler at 76, his last match is going to have the cachet that Cena's match did. But they could have, you know, the guy's had 2 or 3 strokes in the last 5 years. He does not belong anywhere near a wrestling ring.
No, and if Jerry Lawler is going to wrestle again and have one last match, it has to be in Memphis on a smaller scale. Because, to be honest, WWE fans do not, I think, and maybe I'm projecting here, do not see him as Jerry Lawler wrestler.
Right.
They see him as Jerry Lawler puppies commentator.
Right. like our generation saw Gorilla Monsoon as,
Yeah,
will you stop? He was
yeah,
or Bobby Heenan for that, they were accomplished wrestlers in the 60s and 70s, but by the
yeah,
time we started watching, they were these different characters, if you will. So
yeah,
yeah, I agree. Lawler, if it were to happen, I would think it would be in Memphis and something on a smaller scale.
yeah. I guess kind of like what Flair's last match was. So maybe you should reach out to Conrad to see if he'll produce a show.
I've
Hey,
probably
he could probably get him to face Flair. So
yeah, there you go. If you probably look up Jerry Lawler's last match or King Lawler's last match, I'm
yeah.
sure the domains have been purchased. So, uh, but yeah, you know, I, I think that WWE made the right call there. But back to your original question of, I listen, if Jericho wants to do a farewell tour or have a retire, I didn't have a problem with him wrestling in AEW, and I, I think as I've gotten older, because we're only a few years younger than Jericho, but we can kind of sympathize with Triple H, the comments that people made about him with the pictures of him on the boat in
Mhm.
France or wherever they were when Jericho came in and he was, not in the shape I'm like, folks, we're all aging. These assholes are sitting on their couch
Yeah.
probably never once in shape, are sitting here criticizing
Mhm.
and making fun of the way that these men and women look now that they're in there.
Yeah.
When we do it privately on Snapchat, that's and when they do it
I
on
mean, that's just us being snarky. It's not, I don't
right.
think we're being serious. But also, I've seen memes like, all these 20 something fitness influencers, like come talk to me when you're in your 40s and 50s. Let me see how you're doing then. Yeah, it's easy,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, I've never been in shape, but I look back at my 20s and I, I make a joke that in college, I used to host a video show, music
Yeah.
video show. And there's a segment we did on one episode where we're standing by a phone, which we called our request hotlines payphone, these things that used to exist back in the 90s. And I'm like, we're like, oh, this is our video request phone. Hit us up. Let us know what you want to see. And like a few months after we recorded that, I'm like watching it. I'm like, I should have been calling Sally Struthers and having her donate food to me because I just look, again, I'm not muscular now, but was a lot thinner
Yeah.
then, and
Right.
it's not because it's aging. I haven't changed anything about my lifestyle, which is probably why I don't look that way anymore. But yeah, it's a whole different thing, and I don't expect guys, even Cena. I mean, Cena looked good, but I'm sure he's very dedicated
Yeah.
to the regiment, But you look at The Rock and Batista, these guys who have undergone transformations over the last year or so, which I think is because they're trying to branch out in the roles that they play in their
Mhm.
films.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, yes, Jericho is out of shape, but you know, he's, I'm not doing moonsaults and lion salts and getting whacked in the head with, I'm also not singing on a concert stage in a pitchy performance, which I would if I got on stage. So again, what room do I have to criticize? That's why I use my burner account like Michael Jordan.
There you go. So, do you think and I feel like we have to talk about this, and we can do it briefly because we did do a whole episode on it, but several episodes. But looking back on 2025, biggest news of the year, I'm kind of leaning towards the death of Hulk Hogan. Um, and I know that wasn't quote unquote wrestling. It wasn't AAA acquisition or
Yeah.
TNA TV deal. It wasn't your traditional wrestling news, but I think that even through the controversy of Hogan, the Netflix deal started in 2025, and that was really, I think, the last WWE or pro wrestling time that we saw Hogan, and he was booed, and we talked about that as well. But I think even still today, almost 6 months after his death,
Mhm.
it is still kind of surreal to think about the fact that he's not here, and Eric Bischoff is seemingly doing well with the Real American Freestyle that Hogan was going to be a part of. If Hogan were still around, would we have seen him, do you think, as a part of seen his last match, or in the crowd there? How would life have been different if the Hulkster were still here, do you think, in 2025 going into 26?
Yeah, I don't know. Given the reception that he got and the
Hmm.
way fans feel about today's fans feel about him,
Hmm.
I don't know if we would have seen his last match. It might have been a thing where, and I can't remember if they said if Vince McMahon was there or not. Um, but maybe Vince and Hogan would have been together,
Hmm.
off camera.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, you know, especially to today's fans who only know Hulk Hogan after the retirement, after the controversy, and granted, when he was a wrestler, the stuff we've heard about him backstage isn't great.
Hmm.
Again, it was a different time. Wrestling was completely set up differently than it is today. Um, you know, I think probably anybody in his position would have done the same thing, whether right or wrong.
Hmm.
And again, it's, you know, when he goes to WCW and has the creative control, is that Hogan's fault or is that Bischoff's fault?
Hmm.
So you do that. I think it's just, again, the fact that Ric Flair is the last of our generation's main level talent that's still alive is shocking.
Hmm.
Um, and I said it earlier in the show, I was never a Hulkamaniac, but losing Hogan is part of that, you know, wrestling history being lost. That, again, without him, you and I are sitting here talking about Milli Vanilli, probably doing a
Right.
Milli
Yeah.
Vanilli podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, obviously we crossed paths at work, and wrestling connected us, but there's, we do have a lot of the other pop culture nerdum that connects us as well. But yeah, you're right. And the LJNs and all the action, it was a big part of our childhood and pop culture, and the influence, and Vince McMahon, and eh, that's where it becomes this challenge, because like I said earlier in the show, when I showed the Vince McMahon plaque, I said, I don't know if this is the PC thing to do, and,
Right.
and I'm not condemning, or I'm not celebrating,
Condoning.
or exonerating any of the accusations or anything like that, but you can't ignore the fact that these men were big parts of our childhood, and
Mhm.
that does, again, that doesn't make it right. But you also can't criticize or judge people who maybe have the ability to separate the art from the artist, and we've talked about that before in the past as well. So do you think, kind of looking into 26, and I believe if I did my math right, and now I got to put my glasses back on, uh we're looking at episode 632 of the podcast, which would be 1 year from now. um
Rey Mysterio will not be on your show next year.
well, that's in 39 weeks, so I got to work on that still. But do you think, um you know I, will Vince McMahon have any kind of connection to wrestling publicly 1 year from now? Do you think, he's got this production thing going on, and will we see him back involved, whether it's WWE or another venture? Will Vince McMahon be in the spotlight in any way, shape, or form in 2026?
Well, he may be in the spotlight. It may not be the good
Right.
spotlight.
Right.
Um, you know, and this is going to be kind of morbid.
Hmm.
I am kind of surprised Vince McMahon is still alive,
Mm.
and not because I think he would do anything to himself, but I just think, Joe Paterno, the Penn State college football coach,
Yeah,
who his whole career was football,
you're
and
right.
then that got taken away after allegations. And I think he had cancer, but it was within, I think, a year of losing his job, coaching job, that he had passed.
Hmm.
And I think that, to me, I can see Vince McMahon being the same way, where you take that one thing that has defined your life for
Yeah.
60 years, and you take that away, and then you're like, okay, well, what do I do now? What do I have? So not that I wish ill will on Vince McMahon, but um, we talked about Hulk Hogan's passing being more shocking. I think I don't know if it would be the same way with Vince, depending on the circumstances, obviously. But
Mm,
you
mhm.
know, um, but no, I don't see Vince.
You think he's done
I,
with wrestling?
I think he's done, and this is my own projection that I don't think Vince has. I don't want to say he has nothing to offer current day wrestling, but I don't think his what he has to offer is a net positive for wrestling. And
Mm.
that's not just, a personality thing. I think it's the business has moved past him as to what it is today.
Do you think we see Shane? There was talk earlier in the year. I think he was pictured with the Young Bucks and maybe Tony Khan even.
And Tony Khan, yeah.
What?
Tony Khan, he was
Yeah.
had a picture of Tony Khan, yeah.
Where there's smoke, is there fire? Is this just things to get people talking? Do you think Shane McMahon, and does he have anything to offer, you think, to Tony Khan and his style of wrestling?
Well, if he's still trying to book himself to win the Royal Rumble, I would say no.
Yeah.
And again, Shane has apparently a very successful career outside of WWE or outside of wrestling.
Mhm.
I, I'll throw it back to you. Do we see the end of Triple H in WWE?
That was on my list as well. You
Are
hear
we
all
getting close to a McMahonless
right.
society?
You hear all this, but at this point now, more than ever, with it being it's not a even
Mhm.
though it was a billionaire family, it was still a family owned and operated business. And now with the corporate, nobody's safe. You know what I mean? I would be,
I know.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So as each year passes, I would be less and less shocked if Triple H gets let go. I think there's also a lot, the booking by committee. There's rumors that The Rock is really the power player, and if he didn't want Triple H around, he could snap his fingers and he'd be gone because he's on the board. The Rock is on the board, so I would not be surprised. I think that Triple H has taken a lot of criticism in 26 or in 25 rather. And I wonder if it were truly back to that formula of Vince McMahon, Pat Patterson, and Bruce Pritchard kind of making those booking decisions and stuff,
Mhm.
if it were Triple H, it, person A, person B, kind of a three-man team doing that or three-person team doing that
Mhm.
versus kind of running things through TK. Because I do think there's a lot of, with corporate, as you know, a lot of BS that you've got to go through and rigmarole and all that. And,
Yeah.
and again, when your bottom line or when your objective is the bottom line and maybe not necessarily advancing a story or telling a story or doing the right thing,
Mhm.
Travis Scott and Jelly Roll and throwing all of these celebrities into none of the stuff that happened, or not, I shouldn't say none of it, but a lot of the stuff that happened in 2025 to me was a cash grab and didn't make sense story wise, continuity wise. So I think Triple H though was a bit more grounded in that because he was part of that McMahon. And say what you want about Vince, I do think he cared about, a lot of times it maybe didn't show, but I do think the fans mattered and the
Mhm.
pricing and having that family environment mattered to him. Whereas now I do think TKO is after that cash and they measure their success on how much money did they make versus how many tickets did they sell, because you can jack the price up on tickets, sell fewer tickets, but make more money. And that's weird. Tim just did the thumbs up thing after I did that, so I don't know if that'll show up on the video or not. But anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah, I would not be surprised if in 26 Triple H is shown the door, inducting Stephanie into the Hall of Fame. Uh, that's kind of now we are separating ourselves completely from the McMahon era
Yeah.
of WWE wrestling. So
Yeah. Well, hopefully, if Triple H is let go, TK can hire him to get coffee.
And you know, that would be, you know, Triple H is, you know, pushing 60. He's definitely a multimillionaire. I don't know that he's close to being a billionaire, but I mean, 30 years, he's done it all. I mean,
Yeah.
it would not be a bad way to go out, you know. He's in the Hall of Fame. You know, and
Yeah.
that's the other thing too with WWE is when we separate more from, you know, the McMahons or the Triple H's of the world, you know, and it becomes that more corporate thing, I worry about the legacy, you know, the Hall of Fames and the WrestleMania, you
Yeah.
know, because there was talk of rebranding and, you know, WrestlePalooza and kind of distancing from those
Mm.
McMahon ideas.
Yeah.
But eventually we'll all be dead and it won't matter. So you know, part of me is like,
Yeah.
it's something stupid to even worry about. Not, I'm not saying I'm worried about it.
Very
It just
fun.
makes me think about, you know, will there ever be a day where there's not a WrestleMania? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or a Royal Rumble, you know, so I do think about those types of things and I hope that those kind of traditions carry on and we have a Hall of Fame, even though it's meaningless to most fans, but it is, you know, part of the fandom, I guess,
Yeah.
is being involved with it and watching it and you know, 40 plus years of your life watching something and then it kind of changes and you know, maybe I will get Max and become a sicko like the rest of them out
You should
there.
join, come to the other side.
Do you
You know,
see?
I was surprised
Yeah.
talking about AEW. It took 3 matches last night on World's End before somebody was bleeding.
Hmm.
I was shocked. Yeah.
And then did
And it
they?
wasn't Moxley. I mean, Moxley was bleeding, but I think that was legitimate. Like, got punched in the mouth and
Oh.
was bleeding. But yeah,
So do you see for 26, you know, um, TNA obviously has a new TV deal that they're going to be launching here. Do they move in? And from what I read, their association with WWE ends with the TV deal too. So,
I thought it was continuing. The WWE said they'll continue.
oh, okay. I guess I read something else. Do
I mean,
you?
there's a lot of speculation. It's like with Warner Brothers, if Warner Brothers gets bought, AEW's deal is over. And Tony Khan said, no, we have a deal through 2027. And granted, when Warner Brothers does get sold, it's going to take a couple of years before
Right. Yeah.
anything fully goes through. So
Do you see anything changing? You know, I think if you ask fans, the three top companies are WWE, AEW,
mhm,
TNA.
yeah,
Do you see number two and three switching in 2026, or will we continue through the new year as one, two, three, respectively?
I don't think so. But again, I don't watch current TNA. Um, I've probably watched 5 episodes over the last 3 years.
Mm.
Again, it's something in the presentation. It's like TNA has a lot of solid wrestlers, um, but there's just something missing in, and I don't know if it's because all their shows are usually taped, and
Mhm.
there is a, something just when you know nothing major is going to happen,
Mhm.
there's no sense of uh, or expectation of anything in the show. I don't know if that's it or why. And from what I've read, from what little I have seen this year, is I don't think that the WWE. I think the WWE partnership has helped them attract viewers, or at least make people aware that TNA exists. But I don't think it's done anything to help bolster TNA's roster.
Mhm.
We saw it with this John Cena tournament. They bring back Zack Ryder and Dolph Ziggler, but they're not going by those names in TNA. They
Mhm.
lose in their opening match.
Mhm.
You know, you look at Joe Hendry now. I said it a few weeks ago. Joe Hendry is now officially in WWE. I don't see him above mid card comedy act.
Mhm.
And apparently on SmackDown last week, he was in a match with the Miz, Miracle on 34th Street Fight or whatever, that
Yeah.
ended up with R-Truth coming out as the Easter Bunny.
Hmm.
So, I just I hope Tina has surprised everybody by lasting this long, and it's always great to have another place for people to work. But I don't see their um, company being good and not, I don't want to say good enough, being different enough to attract a larger audience.
It'll be interesting to see, and again, I'm not even sure how you would measure the metrics or look at the
Yeah,
metrics because of streaming and uh, tickets. House shows aren't a thing anymore, and
yeah.
so we'll keep an eye on it. And again, as fans, let's just watch and enjoy the show. As we wrap up,
Mhm.
any big predictions for 26? Will there be a breakout star that finally wins a world heavyweight championship, whether it's WWE, AEW? Braun Breaker on January, I think
Yeah.
it's 5th, the first Raw of 26,
Mhm.
faces CM Punk.
Yeah.
Is this going to lead to a title change, or are we going to set the path for WrestleMania 42? Do you think?
I'll counter that and say, will the match have a definitive victor, or will there be shenanigans that get the match thrown out?
Yeah.
Because going back earlier in the show, I think that's one of my issues with WWE too, is the lack of non-finish, or the amount of non-finishes in major matches.
Hmm.
Um, it's like, again, why should I be invested if I know the likelihood of this match being tossed out
Hmm.
exists?
Yeah.
Uh, I I don't see Braun Breaker winning. I think they should. Just it's the big show that honestly, I have been considering resubscribing to Netflix just to watch that episode.
Mm.
Um, I think it will shock people. Again, he doesn't have to hold the title long. He could,
Mhm.
while I'm not big on hot potatoing a title, especially back and forth between people, you could easily lose it at the Rumble, and then you could
Mhm.
build a Mania. But um, I think I would rather see. I think a Braun Breaker, Seth Rollins. If Seth Rollins is back in time for Mania,
Mhm.
I think that match would be better than Seth versus Punk, or Punk versus Braun again at Mania.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
but again, I think you know, the Cena heel turn last year was probably the most shocking thing that we saw, because it wasn't anything we ever thought we would. And I think with WWE, even though again Mr. McMahon is gone, so the mantra of anything can happen in the World Wrestling Federation is also gone. But I think they need to bring it back, and it needs to be um, again not Vince Russo esque swerves for the sake of swerves, but instead of going down the expected path, figure out how to take the off ramp and make it make sense.
Yeah. I agree. I think
And
that
also have it planned out. Don't just do it for the moment and then try to figure out what you're going to do.
right.
Know
Yes.
what you're going to do 3 steps ahead.
It does feel like with Cena, especially the heel turn, it was that in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
worry about the rest later, and that's where it all kind of turned into a shit show, I think, because it kind of spiraled from there. And who knows? But yeah, I agree. I think that I wouldn't mind seeing Braun win it. I don't know what they're going to do with Dominic in 2026. Um, I think he's going to be one to watch. I think Chelsea Green is going to be another one to keep an eye on in 2026 from the WWE side of things. What do you see in AEW? Do you think any unexpected talent? We were talking, I don't know if we talked about it on this podcast or before we started
Uh,
recording, but Kyle Fletcher, I think, was kind of the odds-on favorite of winning the Continental Classic, and that
mm,
didn't happen. We've often seen where when we expect a certain talent to win a certain tournament or
yeah.
championship, they don't, and then they go on to do something even bigger in the
Yeah.
subsequent months. Do you see him rising above? I've seen some comparisons, and I see your eyes will roll when I say this, but Chris Van Vliet, I think, brought it up about the comparisons to Randy Orton. Um, what do you see for Kyle Fletcher in 26, or is there someone else on the AEW roster, since you watch that more consistently, that you
Yeah.
think will go to that next
I
level?
mean, I think if if we're going to see first time world champions in 2026,
Mhm.
the top two names would be Kyle Fletcher and Takeshita.
Mhm.
Even though I can never say it, and I keep wanting to call him Takeshita, by the way that his name is spelled. But I think those are your two potential breakout stars in the men's division. And I think both are currently heels in the Don Callis family, although Takeshita is the storyline that they're going with him and Okada not getting along. I think he's going to break out sooner than later. Um, but I definitely think, Kyle Fletcher, I think he's only like 28, 29 years old. So he's hopefully got a long career ahead of him. Although after his match with John Moxley last night, there was one moment where I thought he was dead because he
Mm.
came right down on his head.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I saw
yeah.
that.
But I think he's there. The women's division, you had Tony Storm break out. I think Harley Cameron has come along
Hmm.
big. I don't know, especially, I mean, she's currently one half of the women's tag champs. I don't know if she'll move into that singles championship contender at any point. Um, but I think Tekla should be getting some title shots in 2026. I would like to see Sky Blue and Julie Hart kind of get back up to where they were before they were both injured. But I one thing I like is that in 2025, the AEW seemed to be content with their roster. We talked about it before. They weren't just signing every
Hmm.
free agent that came along. I wouldn't be surprised to see Karrion Kross show up at some point. But as I said, I think it's better that he didn't come in right
Hmm.
away,
Yeah.
that you give time to kind of let him separate himself from WWE and then make a bigger impact and a bigger surprise when he shows up 7 months later instead of 7 days later.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
And as the rumor is Danhausen's contract is up, I think in February, according to rumor, and there's a reportedly interest from WWE. Do you see Danhausen potentially going to WWE? And if so,
I would not have expected that. Interesting. Um, I didn't even, so he's still under contract with AEW.
he's under he hasn't shown up for over a year, but
I was gonna say, I figured he was just kind of, I think that, the other cool thing about wrestling is that in the 2020s, especially, these talents that are indie talents have been able to kind of make a name for themselves. And I think it's probably a fraction of a fraction, because I think if you show Danhausen to the WWE audience today,
mhm,
probably 80% of them wouldn't know who the hell he is. But the online community knows, and he's got all these action figures and all this merch
yeah,
and the things that 10 years ago, 5 years ago, indie wrestlers wouldn't have had. So I think that
yeah,
there are opportunities out there. The holy grail, I think, for a lot still is WWE or AEW or even TNA. But I think there's money to be made and fame to be had for the independents, and hopefully those guys will continue to flourish. And I think that they do lose some of that autonomy when they go. I think that's part of the reason why Cardona hasn't officially gone back to WWE. And I don't know if there's been any overtures made, but I mean, he's living his best life if you follow him on social media or listen to the podcast. So I don't necessarily think every wrestler's goal these days is to be in WWE. It's to have that freedom and flexibility to make their own decisions,
yeah,
and if they want to wake up in their own bed on a Sunday, they can do that, because they can take a booking that's an hour away or whatever the case is, and still have the merch. Because, and I know you don't follow the figure world so much, but I bet you there's at least 5 independent figure companies out there now that are signing
mhm,
talents and producing figures. Smaller quantities, more expensive, but for
yeah,
the collector out there, they're going after it. So
yeah.
I guess the short answer to your question, I think if it makes business sense for Danhausen, I could see it happening. I'd be very curious to see how WWE markets and continues on with him. Do they keep the
Mhm.
shtick and going, and or do they modify it a bit? So yeah, I'd be interested to see it. And does he join the Joe Hendry,
Mhm.
R-Truth world of kind of the comedy characters that they
Yeah.
have? Well, Chad, this has been a good conversation.
Well,
Anything
I
else
have you
you-
one last
Yeah.
question for you. The
All
over
right.
under. How many times in 2026 will Rikishi say WWE is not using the Usos correctly?
Oh, I think it'll be pretty
52?
yeah. And if depending on the birth of the grandchild and why the kid wasn't booked to be the
Yeah.
speed champion or something, I could see that happening as well. So, well, Chad, happy New Year to you. Thanks for being a part of this, and we'll have
Yeah.
the first episode of 26 coming out next week. We'll figure out something to talk about between now and then. But in the meantime, if you have topic ideas or suggestions, we want to hear from you. Chad, thanks for being a part of this.
Always a pleasure.
Alrighty, friends, thanks for listening and or watching, and we will see you next time.